Welcome to the Sister Mentors podcast. For 25 years, Sister Mentors has been nurturing the next generation of women of color leaders. Our work centers around the needs and dreams of women and girls of color in the face of deep-seated institutional inequities found in the educational system. Over 100 women and girls of color have evolved in astounding ways thanks to Sister Mentors. And with the help of Sister Mentors, they are on their way to earning higher education degrees, particularly PhDs. This podcast features some of the mentors and mentees as they tell me about their lives and educational journeys. These women and girls share their moving stories of who they are, where they come from, and how Sister Mentors was instrumental in keeping them on their educational paths. Shoji Malone was already a doctoral student when she was referred to Sister Mentors, and she felt immediate relief during her first meeting with them. In Sister Mentors, she found guidance and community during a process that some can find rather isolating. After months of feeling misunderstood by friends and family who weren't writing a dissertation, Shoji finally felt seen by her Sister Mentors cohort. I am your host, Camila Adams. Thanks for joining me as we celebrate the bold past and fierce future of Sister Mentors here on the Sister Mentors podcast. Okay, welcome to the Sister Mentors podcast. Today we are talking to Shoji Malone. Hello.
Hi, how are you?
I am good. How are you doing?
I am doing pretty well.
Nice. So let's get right into it. You are a very interesting woman, and I just can't wait for the listeners to learn more about you and your journey, and especially your relationship with Sister Mentors. So let's talk about your roots. Like, where do you come from?
Absolutely. So, I am initially from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I grew up in Wisconsin my entire life. I didn't move to Washington, D.C. or the DMV area until I was 22. So I attended primary school in Milwaukee, high school, and college in Milwaukee. My family actually got to Milwaukee through the Great Migration. My grandmother is initially from Grenada, Mississippi, so small town in Mississippi, and she migrated up to St. Louis, and that's where my mother and her siblings were born and raised. And my father is from St. Louis, and then they transitioned up a little bit further, about a 6-hour drive up to Milwaukee. And so my beginnings with studying Black people and being involved in Black culture start with my grandmother just migrating from one city to the next for job opportunity. So that's how we get there. I'm from an amazing family. My parents are pro-Black everything. So I grew up in a household where they allowed me to read all kinds of books. I was one of those kids who was assigned reading and book reports over the summer. And so they were really keen on making sure that I was proud to be Black, that I was proud to be a woman, that I was proud that I come from the family that I came from, and that I was just an overall well-rounded person. They were parents who allowed me to kind of explore my interests. So I went from dance to swimming to theater and whatever else I wanted to try. So thinking about it as an adult, I can only imagine how busy they must have been with like car drop-offs and things like this. But they really allowed me to explore. They made sure that I knew the importance of education and reading in particular. And they really kind of insulated me in this community where I saw Black people, where I was aware of my surroundings, and where I could also thrive. That was something that was really big for them, is me being able to thrive in my house.
Is Milwaukee rather diverse city, or is it more, just kind of like, most Black, like, is it a little more segregated?
Milwaukee is absolutely segregated. In recent studies, Milwaukee was named one of the most segregated cities in the United States. But you know what's funny? I don't think that I truly realized that. You know what I mean? Being in my community, I don't think that I realized how segregated the city was and still currently is. just because, again, my parents made sure that I had great role models. I had mentors. I went to schools that had different programming. I was very busy. So I don't even really think I got the opportunity to take a look and see what was really happening in the landscape, in the overall landscape of the city.
Well, speaking of some of your activities and whatnot that you were involved in, how did you find out about Sister Mentors, and how old were you when you joined? And what prompted you to join?
Yeah, so I was maybe around, that's a good question. I was probably around 26, 27 when I
Okay.
discovered Sister Mentors. So I discovered Sister Mentors on the later end. I was a doctoral student already at the University of Maryland by the time I got to Sister Mentors. And Sister Mentors has a great reputation, which I don't think I altogether realized, because my advisor referred me to Sister Mentors at
Okay.
one point. Some of my colleagues on campus referred me to Sister Mentors. So one thing about going to a PWI, and especially a large Big Ten PWI, is that Black students kind of all run in the same circles. You know one another. And if you don't, it's like you'll see someone in the library and it's just like, hey, girl, you know what I mean? And so there's this camaraderie that happens almost organically.
Yeah.
And so I took a lot of classes with Black women, and two of them actually told me about Sister Mentors and how they recently joined and how it was helping them through their process. And so I had kind of exhausted all of my other options, and I said, I need to finish this dissertation and nothing else is working. So let me just try it out. I wasn't exactly sure about all of the intricacies, but since it kept coming up, it was almost like you can at least try it once. You can at least go to one meeting. And
Right.
so it turned out to be the perfect fit though.
Okay. All right. So I guess we should probably back up a little bit, and like, how did we get from Milwaukee to the DMV area?
So like I said, I went to Marquette University. When I got to Marquette, I just turned 17. And so I was a little bit younger than my peers, and I wasn't turning 18 until the next year in April.
Did you
And
graduate
so
early from high school?
I skipped the 5th grade.
Oh,
And
wow.
so I graduated a little bit earlier than everyone else. And so I was a little younger. And so when I got there, I don't think that I really had a good idea about the rigor of college, because I had done so well in high school. I thought it was just kind of going to be a continuation. I always did well in school. So, I was a bit exhausted because I went to an IB high school.
Mhm.
And so I took IB classes. I had just gotten out of IB exams. I did a summer program at Marquette University. And so by the time the semester started, I was exhausted, but I was clear that I thought that I was clear that I wanted to be a pediatrician.
Mm.
And so I enrolled in all these very rigorous classes. I think I took biology, chemistry, calculus, and a random theater class in one semester. And no one told me that
Wow.
that was probably not the best idea.
This is
And
your
so,
first semester?
my first semester.
Wow.
And I look back on that like, oh my gosh, like somebody should have said you should mix
Yeah.
this up. That was probably not the best idea. And so in that semester, I really discovered the rigor of college, and I decided that perhaps pre-med was not the track for me. And so once I got to the communications college, I was like, you need to figure out what you're going to do, girl. And so one day I was at the hair salon, and I was complaining to my hairdresser about all of these various troubles that I was having and how now I changed to this new major and all of the things that were going on. And she said to me, I know somebody that may be able to help you. And so she connected me with my first college mentor, who graduated from Marquette University. Her name is Anique Ruiz, and she took me under her wing, and she gave me my first internship at a law firm.
Oh, wow.
So I worked in the marketing department over there at the law firm. And one thing that she mentioned to me is that there was this program called the McNair Scholars Program. And at the time, my now husband, he was also in the McNair Scholars Program. And so they kept talking to me about it. And she said, you know what? I think it's something you should do. You should check it out and go to an informational meeting, and I'll write your letter of recommendation. I can connect you with someone that I think would be a great mentor through that program. And so that's what happened. I got accepted into the McNair Scholars Program. And I decided that was my first experience doing my own independent research, of course, with the supervision of somebody amazing, another Black woman named Kaylee Murray, who is a faculty member over in the law school. So I was doing all of this research on the law and property law and enslavement and property law during enslavement. And it was really interesting to me. And so I continued that research until my last semester in college. And throughout that time, I had done several communications internships and I hated them. I didn't like the corporate space. It just wasn't for me, but I wasn't altogether sure what else I would do. And so the McNair program kind of gave me another way, and it showed me another career path, which would be to go into scholarship. And so McNair, if you know anything about the Ronald E. McNair Scholars Program, they push Black and brown students to go into postgraduate degree programs. And so at that time, I wasn't altogether sure whether I wanted to do that. I thought that, law school was an option, grad school was an option. I was kind of weighing things out. And then I got to LSAT prep. And that is where my mind changed. I said, I am going to grad school because the LSAT was not for me. Oh. And the McNair Scholars Program actually prepared you to take the exam for grad school. And so I said, well, I'm getting all of this preparation. I have a writing sample. I have people to review my grad school application. Let's do it. And that's exactly what I did. And I ended up getting it. I think I applied to 10 schools. I think it's important to say this. I applied to 10 schools.
Wow.
And I got into 2 of them.
Wow.
And I want everybody to know that that is very common, which I didn't know. I thought that, I was failing in some sense because I only got into 2 schools. But the reality is that that is a very common experience.
Okay.
Because grad school is much different than undergrad. Your course load is much smaller. And your cohort is much smaller. So they can only accept a certain amount of students into the program. Right. So while they may have 1,200 students, they may only accept 5 or 6.
Wow.
And so that is a very common experience. But at the time, I didn't think so. And so I decided to go to the University of Maryland because we went on a graduate school. We, being the McNair Scholars Program, took us on a graduate school college tour, if you will, to meet people at schools and things like that. And I met my advisor during that visit. Okay. And so I had a connection there. I applied. They gave me funding, which was super important. And so I went from undergrad into a PhD program. I did not have a master's degree. They accepted me right into the PhD program, which, in some cases is peculiar. In other cases, it's not. There are other people who do that. Okay. And so when I got there, as you can imagine, it was a huge culture shock to me, being a communications major and having one large research project under my belt, to go into school having to read 3 to 4 to 5, sometimes books a week, courses at nighttime. There were so many different elements that were a transition for me. And so I got through my coursework and I got through my comprehensive exams. I took my final comprehensive exam and I was on to the dissertation, and I presented at my outline to my dissertation committee, and they approved it. But when it was time for me to do all the things that I said I was going to do in my outline, I was stuck. So I needed some sort of help with that. Because it's one thing to say that you're going to do something, but the how is really the difficult part, right? So you have all of these methodologies. You say you're going to go into all these archives, et cetera, but how do you really do that? and manage your life. Because another thing that people don't realize is that doctoral students are also often teaching and working in other capacities. And so at one time I was teaching 2 classes. At another time I was teaching a class and advising students. I worked the gamut of jobs. At another point, I taught every single semester, including summer and winter, because, as a grad student, you don't make as much money. So when you have an opportunity to make more money, you take those opportunities. And so by the time I got to Sister Mentors, I was completely burnt out. And I will never forget this. I walked into the Sister Mentors office. Dr. Lewis greeted me, and if you know Dr. Lewis, she is very direct.
Yes.
She said, okay, why do you want to be here? And I almost didn't know what to say. I said, I need help. I need help. This is the journey. And she said, okay, well, we're having a meeting tonight. She asked me another series of questions, and then I went directly into the meeting. And when I got into the meeting, it was almost like magical. If you ask me, it was so magical because people were crying, people were venting, people were coming up with plans, people were affirming one another. Every Sister Mentors meeting starts and ends with an affirmation.
Oh, wow.
You know what I mean? It's just like this insulated place of support, and I really needed that. I'm a first gen student. I don't know if I said that or not, but I'm a first generation college student, and now I'm a first generation student to go through graduate school as well. And so it wasn't an easy journey because most people just didn't understand what was happening. My family's like, you've always done well in school. What is the problem?
This is so much more. This is different.
Yeah, they're like, don't you like reading? Like, don't you? I'm confused about what you're talking about. And sometimes it would almost get to a place where I felt misunderstood by everyone. And then I would go into Sister Mentors meetings, and it would be like this breath of fresh air. Like, no, you're not alone. No, you're actually experiencing something that's very normal. And let's figure it out together. And so that is almost the spirit of Sister Mentors, is like, okay, yes, there are issues, there's troubles, it's a hard thing to do. There are challenges, but let's figure it out together. I absolutely needed that.
Yeah, that sounded like it, because it can be difficult when you feel like you don't have anybody else to talk to about what you're going through. It's like, am I crazy? Like, is this wrong? Am I doing something wrong? And it's just like, just to get that affirmation, that validation, like, yes, this is how it goes.
Yes. And when I think in many African-American families, it's true that we have a specific way that we think work is supposed to look. And so because I would be at my computer or I would be on my phone, people generally thought I didn't work. They were like, what is happening? This is why you're not getting done, because you're not working, right? And so and I think that's just an experience thing and a lack of knowledge or
generational.
And so I would actually have people that would come up to me like, okay, are you going to work today? Can you watch my baby? Like, are you busy? I don't know how this all is happening. Right. And so I would go into Sister Mentors and say those things, and everybody would be like, I can't believe they said that to you. And so it would just be a really cool place.
So what was your dissertation? What was your topic? What was it on?
So I study Black women in church hats, and that is a very interesting thing to say, and a topic that often catches people off guard. And so one of the things that I learned in graduate school is that Black women are often not always represented in the written record. So as I said, I had a McNair Scholars research project under my belt when I got to grad school. So I thought I was just going to continue that. I was really interested in the law. I like to study slavery. It was a natural transition in my opinion. But when I got there and when I actually started to look through the archives, it's much more difficult to find case material and pull together case material that is related to Black women. And so
Wow.
while I was attempting to do that work, I was taking a course with my advisor on material culture, the study of how people and things are related. Like, how do things tell the American story, right? If Black women are not written in the record, what are they using on a day-to-day basis that can tell us what their lives may have been like? And so with that knowledge, I said, I when I looked through photos in the archive, I often saw images of enslaved women wearing head coverings, head wraps, aprons, dresses, various different things. And so that propelled me to think about my own experience in church, right? Like, what if enslaved women are consistently wearing these head wraps, and then mother such and so is wearing these hats? Is there a connection? Is this something that happens over time? What could this possibly mean? What do these hats and hair wraps mean to this group of women, in particular in the Christian faith? Like, what does that all say? And is that a part of how Black women are building culture? And is that a part of Black culture? And the answer is absolutely yes. Hats reveal so much about how Black women chose to create this Christian identity, how they identify as women, how they construct womanhood and what that means in the Christian faith. It also tells stories of their own personal lives. And so it's a variety of stories that take place, and there are similar threads through them all, and some of those threads go all the way back to enslavement. And so it's a really interesting way to learn about Black women that I think, well, for sure, I had not read before. And
Right,
for
yeah.
two, I thought that it was a good way to embody the research is me search theory, that your research starts with you and your own personal experiences and your own personal interest in what you just observe about the world around you. I defended my dissertation in December 2021.
Okay.
And so once I defended my dissertation, one of my dissertation committee members said, Shoji, don't look at it for 6 months. Do not look at this document for 6 months. Approach it with fresh eyes.
Wow.
And I decided to take her up on that offer and not look at it for about a year.
Oh.
And so
it's like, I'm going to double down.
Yep. I decided that I would completely disconnect from it and try to find a way to approach it differently, from a less traumatic lens, if you will. And what I decided was that I was more interested in the stories of these women. And so, although I will likely transition my dissertation into a larger book project or articles or something like this, I decided that I wanted to turn it into a visual project first. And so right now I'm collecting interviews with women on film.
Nice.
And my hope is to put it together to become a larger documentary or docu-series.
Wow, that's awesome. So, okay, so you mentioned that, a lot of this happened, a lot of this was going on, a lot of your writing was like in the middle of pandemic. And so in isolation, like for real, like actual isolation.
I found SisterMentors before the pandemic. I found it before the pandemic, and then the pandemic hit. I was maybe in SisterMentors for about a year prior to the pandemic hitting us, which was amazing. Because I already had the connections with the people in the organization. And so when the pandemic hit, Dr. Lewis is amazing. She literally jumped into action and sent out a message like, everybody stay home. Nobody go anywhere. They're saying that this disease, we don't know what's going on. However, you all stay at home and I'm going to call everyone in a second. And she literally calls us one by one, like, are you okay? Make sure that you're not leaving your house. Please don't leave your house right now. And this is maybe in March, somewhere around the time when the NBA shut down.
Oh, man.
And so she's like, no, nobody leave their house. I know you all love each other, but Sister Mentors is canceled. Our meeting is canceled.
So she called everybody individually, and you all, I'm assuming, eventually started doing like maybe online meetings.
I think almost immediately she set up a Zoom, and we started to do our graduate sister mentor meetings and our meetings with the younger girls, the middle school and high school girls as well.
Wow.
Over Zoom. And that was really important, partially because we were so isolated. Like, thinking about 2020, we were so isolated. It's almost mind-boggling to think about the fact that I leave my house without a mask these days.
Right, yeah.
We were so isolated, and so Dr. Lewis wanted to make sure that we still had space and that everyone was still achieving, right? Everyone's still pursuing their education. Let's not forget about that. Like, I understand all of this is going on and we don't know how to navigate it, but I think one of her major points was, how do we get you all to continue?
Right.
How do we keep everybody on something that is similar to the track they were on before? It may not be the same, but how can we get everybody, first of all, up and moving?
Yeah.
And then thing number 2, how can we get everybody to stay the course?
And how did you go about doing that yourself?
Oh gosh. So one of the things that Sister Mentors did since before the pandemic was create a community, and that community sustained even virtually. And so Sister Mentors would host daily writing sessions for people. And literally almost every day people would get online and just write on Zoom with one another. And then eventually that branched off into smaller writing groups, which is what happened with me. A friend of mine, the same friend that referred me to Sister Mentors, we created a smaller writing group with she and I and one other woman, and we were determined to finish. And so we would cry, we would just be overwhelmed. We would struggle, but every morning we would check in with one another like, okay, what time do y'all want to write today? Are you going to write today? Another thing people don't realize is that when you're a doctoral student and you're defending your dissertation, you're also applying for jobs, which is another job in and of itself. And so it is a large to-do, right? And so me and these women literally Monday through Friday would get together and come up with a strategy every week and every day on how to get all of these things done. And Dr. Lewis herself would be up late reading my chapters.
Oh.
She's like, okay, Shoji, you said you want to get done. I will help you. I will literally read your chapters. Send me what you have right now, and then we'll meet at 7:00 tomorrow. And that's what would happen. I would send her what I had, and she would show up on Zoom with a printout of it and say, okay, online X of page X, you don't have a footnote here, or this, I think you need to rewrite this sentence, or, maybe think about this. And so while the sisters are important, Dr. Lewis is extremely important.
Yeah, absolutely. So have you gotten to do any mentoring yourself?
I did. I have had 2 mentees through the Sister Mentors program, and now I am a full-time professor. And so
congratulations.
Thank you. And so that has its own set of mentorship opportunity. And so what Sister Mentors did for me personally in terms of figuring all of this out is it gave me a platform to exercise the gifts that I already had. Right. So when you walk into a Sister Mentors meeting, everybody's like, you're great already. We love you instantly. Right. Oh. And so when you get there, you you develop a certain level of confidence that says that I have these God-given giftings, and then allow sister mentors to help you platform them. And so one of the things that is really important to me is cultivating students' gifts already. And so sister mentors gave me the opportunity to practice that. How do you help a high school student who is in the process of trying to transition into a college classroom? How do you help them to use the giftings and talents and interests that they already have to be successful at the next level, right? And so Sister Mentors gave me that opportunity and gave me the wherewithal to just be able to exercise and to practice, right? Because you need a safe place to practice what you want to do. And so Sister Mentors allow me to practice with my mentees and say, okay, these are some of the strategies that I think are great.
And so you are a professor now at American University?
I am.
And what are you teaching?
So I teach African American and African diaspora studies. So I teach the introduction to African and African American diaspora.
That's amazing.
And then
that's so interesting.
I love it. I absolutely love it. I recently, this past spring, proposed a class and filled out a class of students who I taught Black women's history to. It was my first time teaching a course like that. And so we talked about Black women in activism. We talked about Black women in theology. We talked about the Great Migration. We talked about Black women in entrepreneurship. Oh, wow. We talked about Black women in resistance and how joy is an element of resistance. We talked about Pan-Africanism and Black women. We talked about Marcus Garvey's wife and how she is actually the person who's developing most of the tenets of what we now know as Garveyism. We talked about silent acts of resistance and silent acts of protest. Like, so sometimes women are the people who are baking the cakes to be able to fund someone's dream or to sell it, to fund someone to go to college. Right. That's an act of resistance. That's an act of activism. Right. We often think about activism as, taking a knee or marching on Washington, which is also important. But one of the things that was really important to me is that they learned about the everyday lives of Black women and how just an everyday moment for a Black woman can be a moment of resistance, liberation, activism, advocacy, just in their everyday lives. They're actually doing and participating in these types of things. And so it was really cool.
Yeah, it's really, I love that you highlight that portion, that those examples of activism.
Yeah, and that's what one of the things my research taught me. Some women are making fabrics during enslavement that would tell stories of their own ability to practice self-care under enslavement, which is not something we often think about, right? There are women who are dyeing fabrics, creating patterns, tearing things apart, making new things. They're really artisans, right? And so that's an everyday act that can tell us the story about how Black women survive and thrive underneath colonialism and underneath Jim Crow and racism, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that was one of my favorite classes to teach so far.
That's great. Can you send me your syllabus and or book list? Because I'm very interested to learn more about that. I just love the way the direction that a lot of college courses are going these days, and the fact that we're getting more Black women as professors and in the classrooms, leading the classrooms, and it's making all the difference in the world. And I am grateful for you. Grateful for Black women educators.
Thank you. And I tell my students, I don't expect you to come out of this class being a scholar. Like, you go be a nurse, right? Everybody do what they were, purposed and sent here to do. Right. But do it with the understanding that everyone's experience in America is not the same as yours.
Right.
And that Black and brown people have a very different experience that is worthy of being acknowledged, learned about, and considered in legislation and engineering when we're building, these hospitals and work buildings. Is it accessible for people? How are we saying that folks should show up at interviews? How is it that natural hair and natural hairstyles is still being considered unprofessional? What are the various tenets of everyday life that you as a person in whatever industry you choose to go into, how can you affect change in that industry?
Amen. Thank you, Shoji. It's been an honor and a pleasure to speak with you. Thank you so much for sharing yourself with us.
Absolutely. I'm so glad. I'm so grateful and honored to be here with you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, of course. And keep doing what you're doing, man. I don't know you, but I'm proud of you.
Thank you so much. That's another thing as a Black woman PhD. When you meet other Black women, it's like this instant,
yes.
I don't know you, but I'm very proud.
It's like, girl, I feel you. Thank you. Thank you. I am sending you love.
Thank you so much. That means the world to me. It's an honor to be in the company of greats like you.
Oh, thanks, honey. For more information on Sister Mentors, a project of EduSeed, please visit sistermentors.org. You can also find us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn as Sister Mentors. Please subscribe, rate, and review the show wherever you get your podcasts, and don't be afraid to share. This podcast was produced by Rugged Angel Productions for Sister Mentors.